Bet the Board.
What do you mean you don't bet? I mean, I don't bet. You know, I don't gamble. I don't. I never have, and I never will. Yeah, right. I'll bet you $20 I can get you gambling before the end of the day.
You owe me 15 grand, pal.
Pay him. Pay that man his money.
It's the Bet the Board podcast.
God likes me. He really, really likes me.
In the end, I wound up right back where I started. I could still pick winners, and I could still make money for all kinds of people back home. And why mess up a good thing?
Here's Payne Insider and Todd Fuhrman.
Welcome in to the Bet the Board podcast, NFL Football Edition, Week 9. We are officially at the midway point of the NFL regular season. I'm your host, Todd Fuhrman, joined as always by my esteemed colleague and co-host, the one, the only Payne Insider. And Payne, I'm not going to lie, a little bit disappointed you didn't get an invite on the Dolphins team jet, that you won't be in attendance for the team you root for and a player that you love more than your own family Sunday morning.
There was a lot to unpack there, and it doesn't sound like any of it's true.
I mean...
Although I am not in Germany.
No, you're not in Germany. Okay, that part we know is factually
that part
correct.
was pinpoint accurate.
And it's still, I guess...
have been to Germany.
I guess it's debatable on a week-in, week-out basis if you love your family more than you love Patrick Mahomes. True or false?
True. I respect talent. I respect efficiency. That's where I'm at in my life right now.
Spoken like an old man who wants people to get off his lawn. And if you respect efficiency and you respect talent, you may not respect the football game that we have to start the weekend between the Titans and Steelers.
Early night. This is my sleep night.
The Steelers, depending on where you look, we'll call them a 2.5-point favorite. There has been an absolute battle on this game. Every time it gets to 3, there's some dog money. Every time it ticks down to 2.5, there's a little bit of an appetite for the favorite. Total in this game, 37, which doesn't suggest a whole lot of offensive fireworks at Heinz Field or Crisier Field or whatever the hell we're calling it these days. This is a Titans team that comes into the game remaining unbeaten at home, still searching for their first victory on the road. But Mike Vrabel has made a living as an underdog, going 16-8 the last 24 games the Titans have caught points. When we look at the Steelers, they meanwhile remain a hot mess. One of two teams since the merger to have a winning record through 7 games, despite being outgained in every contest. Since the 2010 Washington Commanders, they were outgained in the first 8 games last season as well. I mean, winning record, point differential, throw the record books out as it pertains to the Steelers' ability to win with less under Matt Canada as their offensive coordinator. Will Levis, Payne, we saw make his NFL starting debut, went out there and dazzled as far as touchdowns were concerned. You highlighted some of the efficiency concerns that were there from a down-to-down standpoint against the Atlanta Falcons. Derrick Henry should be licking his chops against a Steelers run defense that's been a little bit vulnerable against the run. At the same time, there could be reinforcements for the black and gold that maybe give them a little bit of solace that they can force Will Levis to beat them through the air. When you look at this game, Titans offense, Steelers defense, I know it is clearly going to be must-see TV.
Choking me up a little bit there. We did discuss Will Levis's performance on the recap show. I believe it was Monday.
All the days blend together.
They're always Monday. Yeah, so it would be Monday. There was, an explosive debut, and I think it was more than anybody could have hoped for. I know it was more than a lot of sharp guys projected. We didn't love the down-to-down consistency, and that was one thing we outlined there. It's like the Titans were only better than the Tommy DeVito-led Giants in passing success rate last week, and even some of the high leverage downs. Levis struggled. He struggled with pressure as well. 36% completion rate. He had an 8% turnover-worthy play rate when he was under duress. And so, like, the thought process is obviously, and why the battle's happening is you have this rookie quarterback. He's on a short week hitting in the road. There's now film on him. It's not like he's been repping with the first team the last 3 months and he's gotten all the necessary snaps you'd want from a young kid. Titans' offensive line is also bottom of the barrel. And you look at Levis, he was pressuring 42% of his dropbacks in the debut before the Tannehill injury. Ryan was pressuring 39% of his dropbacks. The Steelers are top 10 in pressure rate. So that's kind of the mindset of maybe the Steelers side here, along with the pricing, right? There was a drastic dip below the key, so you could see why that side's potentially getting bought. And then you start actually like digging into it. And, when it gets to 3, you're getting the buys on Tennessee because we kind of know Pittsburgh's wildly fraudulent. But I think there is some variance in the reason that battle's going on is something that we've discussed for the 3rd straight week now. I cannot believe we're doing fucking Steelers games for the 3rd straight week, but here we are. If the Steelers don't get pressure, right, it's a bottom 5 pass defense in EPA. And now Minkah Fitzpatrick is out. He's been the eraser back there. He kind of cleans up all of the Steelers' coverage mistakes, and there's a bunch of them because their corners aren't great. And then on top of that, you look at the Steelers, they've actually been shredded by the deep ball, 4th worst passer rating allowed on deep throws. So suddenly it's like, maybe Levis doesn't need to be as efficient down to down as we think if he can kind of exploit the Steelers secondary a couple times deep. And we just saw that DeAndre Hopkins, was upgraded. He's going to play in this game. The run game might also have a chance to support Levis as well. And, for as bad as the Titans have been in pass protection, top 10 in adjusted line yards. So they're getting some push there. Opponents haven't been able to stuff money runs. They're allowing a league low 12% of runs to be stuffed. So maybe Will Levis isn't in these unfavorable down and distances as well. That helps a young kid making his first road start. Derrick Henry really got going last week, 4.7 yards per touch. The Steelers are 25th in defensive line yards, below average in EPA per rush allowed. The Steelers have basically been manhandled recently on the ground. I think the good news there, though, is Cam Hayward is being elevated to the active roster, logged the full practice on Wednesday. So having the big fella back in there is certainly going to help in the middle of that defense. And maybe it does, prevent Derrick Henry and Spears from going a little nuts there. I'll be honest here. Like, as soon as I saw Will Levis connecting on some video game highlights and the Steelers were getting smacked early by the Jaguars, I jot Pittsburgh down on my week 9 look into list.
Yep.
Right, healthy Mitch, fire up the Maserati, you get Cam Hayward back, you get the rookie quarterback on the road, hostile environment, short week. And then Pickett's like, hey, I'm going to play with this massive rib injury, which wouldn't allow me to walk off the field properly or finish last week. And at that point, I'm just immediately turned off, Todd, by the thought of Matt Canada running Najee Harris into a Titans defensive front that has Tyre Tart back. And we outlined his importance. And then all of a sudden, Kenny Pickett's out there just laboring around. And I'm like, okay, I'm off the game now. So
Payne,
I wish we would have had Mitch.
When you have a chance to back Kenny Pickett, who now has 12 passing touchdowns compared to 13 interceptions in his NFL career, 1 game with multiple touchdown passes, and the 2nd worst passer rating in the NFL, not entirely of his own doing, behind only Zach Wilson since the start of last season, I don't understand how you couldn't be brimming with confidence to lay points on a Thursday night on a short week with an injury that you highlighted. Kept him out of the latter portions of the Jags game, but he's able to be available for a short turnaround.
His best attribute is the toughness and the availability. Unfortunately, as a bettor, that's his worst attribute to me. So here we are.
Spoiler alert, the Pittsburgh Steelers had a look at the schedule. They play the Green Bay Packers next week. That will not be a game that we talk about on this podcast. So we are granted an official reprieve from breaking down Pittsburgh Steelers football, at least for a week, around the Bet the Board home offices.
We do need the Packers. It's a vital win. It's a vital game for 2 win totals.
It'd be nice if the Packers could show up this week. It'd be nice if the Packers could show up next week. It'd be nice if the Packers had shown up last week. I mean, the Jordan Love experience is truly one that takes you through the full range of emotions on a week in, week out basis.
Did you see the quote from the GM?
Yes.
He's not quite sure he's got the quarterback of the future.
Shocking. I wonder what was the giveaway there. I mean, is Brett Hundley out there and available? Is he still on the roster?
Oh, brutal. Hopefully, we want good Jordan Love though this week. That would be nice.
I mean, look, if he's playing against Brett Rippon, I hope there's something as a redeeming quality for the Green Bay Packers. But all right, let's talk about big time, real adult football. First thing in the morning on Sunday, 9:30 Eastern from Frankfurt, Germany, 6:30 for those of us out here on the West Coast. It is the Kansas City Chiefs, a 1.5 point favorite against the Miami Dolphins. Total on this game, 50.5 or 51, depending on where you shop. As far as travel plans, since everybody loves a good international itinerary, Miami left on Monday, Kansas City left during the middle of the week. This will be the 49th regular season international game and the first between teams that will enter the contest 4 games above 500. It's the first defending Super Bowl champion since the Eagles to play an international game, and the top 2 teams when it comes to odds to win the AFC. The Dolphins, number 1 scoring offense versus the Chiefs' number 2 scoring defense. Clearly one of the matchups to watch. When we look at the Chiefs' 6-game win streak snapped with a 24-9 loss to the Broncos in Week 8, an uncharacteristically poor performance all around for the Kansas City offense. When we look at some of the interesting international trends, this will most likely be the 4th international game with an over-under of 50 or more points. The previous 3 have all gone under by at least 11.5 points. The Chiefs have gone under in 6 straight games, where the total was set in the 50-plus range, and it's tied for the 5th longest streak, since 1979 in that regard. Payne, when we look at the Dolphins offensively, though, this is a group that has dealt with an absolute mash unit along the offensive line. There appears to be a little bit of optimism that this group is trending in a positive manner, and the Dolphins could enter this contest with some building blocks around Tua for a quarterback that has mastered the quick release and could be the youngest player to lead the NFL in passer rating in back-to-back seasons since Johnny Unitas accomplished the feat in 1957 and 1958.
That is a good synopsis of this entire game, or at least on this side of the ball. I think, pressure is going to be one of the larger talked about items of anyone breaking this game down. Schedule is interesting here as well. Kansas City's faced some solid quarterbacks this season, but as a whole, the Chiefs have played a below-average schedule of offenses, still been very good as a pass defense when you adjust for that, top 5 in efficiency. But kind of a monster test, I think, against Mike McDonald and Tua and Tyreek and Waddle. And this, to me, is going to really catapult these two teams to the back half of the season. We're going to learn so much about these two and this data point. I think it's the same thing we talk about a lot of the weeks for Dolphins games, especially when they're facing a plus defensive front here. And I think that's where the Chiefs are certainly trending when you can kind of put a trio of Chris Jones and Charles Omenihu and George Karlaftis out there. You look at them individually. Karlaftis right now over a 16% pressure rate on pass rush snaps. Chris Jones 15%, Charles Omenihu 16%. Since those 3 have been available together, the Chiefs are generating a 44% pressure rate. And we know Tua's struggles, right? 30th in adjusted accuracy, despite the yards per pass attempt falling off a cliff, nearly 4 yards when pressured. So not a good combination there. And then some of the positive things that you were kind of hinting at there, both Teron Armstead and Connor Williams traveled to Germany and both logged limited practices on Wednesday. If the Dolphins can get back their starting center and left tackle, right, that's massive. So you got to monitor those 2 big fellas leading up to kickoff there. The other thing is Tua does a fantastic job, to your point, kind of combating pressure before it actually arrives, right, by getting rid of it so quickly. 2.3 seconds and the ball's out of Tua's hands. Fastest time to throw among 38 qualifying quarterbacks. The middle of the Chiefs' defense could be compromised as well. Nick Bolton, the Chiefs' green dot, he's on IR. Willie Gay is dealing with a lower back injury as well. Didn't practice to start the week. We'll have to monitor that. What's interesting to me, though, is all the talk. And even, with us, it's Tua, it's the Chiefs' pressure, it's, Tyreek against his old team. Those things are obviously going to matter, no doubt. But Mike McDaniel, right? I mean, his bones were made as an elite run mind, right? Like he's an offensive mind that was focused on the run game. He comes from the Kyle Shanahan tree. Miami's run game should have a significant impact here. The Dolphins have the most efficient run offense in the league, and that's even with A-Chain missing. They've got a couple guys there that are helping Mostert out in that. Kansas City still bottom 10 in defensive rush efficiency, Todd. So, all the talk will be Tyreek against his old team, Tua against that front of the Kansas City Chiefs. I think the Dolphins are going to be able to fire up the run game here. Mike McDaniel certainly is going to try to be balanced, and that could, potentially be the deciding factor in this game in my mind.
It's such an interesting matchup because when you look at this Dolphins team and try and figure out how they're going to go about their business, they're so multidimensional. And the one narrative around the Dolphins, Payne, as I'm sure you've been subjected to as well, is that, the Dolphins can't be good teams. They can't do this. They can't do that. And I mean, I know our running joke is you better get the best of the Dolphins now because when this team gets healthier, they're going to be an absolute bitch to try and knock out of the playoffs because they can beat you in a variety of ways. And when you look at the overall improving health on the offense, that's only one side of the ball. ball. The Dolphins are getting healthy defensively as well, and we knew it was going to take a little while for Vic Fangio's scheme to kind of catch on. He needed all the chess pieces in the back, and signs point to them having their top trio of defensive backs all available this weekend. And Jalen Ramsey, we saw log a massive workload last week, including interception. Javon Holland clears concussion protocol, and Xavier Howard can potentially play together, allowing them to be multiple. In steps the Chiefs offense. Yes, it was an uncharacteristically poor performance against the Denver Broncos. Mahomes takes 3 sacks, dealt with a ton of pressure. They mustered just 9 points, struggle on third downs. And Mahomes comes out after the game and said the Broncos did a great job of making us be patient. Vic Fangio has the blueprint to make life difficult for Kansas City. How do things unfold on this side of the ball?
Yeah, that was a very good lead-in. I think this side of the ball probably has some variance. The Chiefs are struggling offensively relative to the lofty expectations, right? I mean, we're so accustomed to them having the most efficient offense in the NFL and, by a long mile. And now all of a sudden they're 5th and people are ready to panic a little bit. We know there's far too much talent in both the defensive mind of Vic Fangio as well and the Dolphins defensive personnel to be a bottom third defense in this league. And so that's kind of the interesting dilemma here with this game is, both have kind of underachieved to this point, but you can kind of just, you see the potential there for both. Even if the Chiefs offense isn't what it's been in the past, it's still playing to a rate that has given the Dolphins a little bit of trouble, right? When you think about the Dolphins defense and playing this class, they've struggled. Miami's faced 3 top 10 offenses through 8 weeks. They're giving up almost 38 a game on average in those spots. Now things are trending better, to your point. Non-garbage time in the last 4 weeks. Dolphins are 8th in EPA per play allowed on defense. Less than 39% of plays have graded successful against that Dolphins defense. Xavier Howard, Jalen Ramsey, what you mentioned, will play together for the first time. So that's huge. Vic Fangio certainly has familiarity with Mahomes and Reed, and he's given them a run for their money when they were humming offensively over the years, right? He was in the AFC West coaching Denver. There's a 6-game sample there. Mahomes only has 7 passing touchdowns during that sample. In general, Vic's kind of wanted to play zone coverage and, mix and match his guys back there. Traditionally, that is not the way to defend Mahomes, although it's been a little bit more of a better proposition this year when you look at some of Mahomes' splits against zone. But I think, you kind of just go back to even the Chargers game most recently where they come out and zone a little more soft coverage and the Chiefs just eat them alive. And so that'll be an interesting game within the game here. You also have Javon Holland, who cleared concussion protocol. How's Vic Fangio going to use him? Are you going to just go say, hey, go try and remove Travis Kelce? We're going to play man against him like a box and one basketball style? Because if not, the Dolphins over the years have had trouble defending tight ends. It seems to be an issue again this year as well. Bottom 7 in EPA allowed to the position, give up tons of targets and a ton of catches. So stylistically is what I'm interested to see here. Is Vic Fangio going to make some adjustments and potentially create the best plan in this matchup, or is he going to continue maybe trying to do what he wants his defense to be because the guys on that side are starting to catch on because it was just so diametrically different than what the Dolphins defense had been in past years. So I think the scheme is going to matter here, and it's difficult to exactly put your finger on the pulse of what Vic's going to do here. But he's had some good game plans over the years against better Reed and Mahomes offenses.
One question I have to ask you, when you look at the storyline that I know is bigger from a narrative perspective on Tyreek Hill, how valuable can it be having a player like Tyreek Hill and the Dolphins that can help break down some of the passing concepts that the Chiefs like to employ, tendencies, and those things when you look for any potential edge in a game that could go a long way in terms of giving one of these teams an inside track to being the number 1 seed in the AFC?
Yeah, I mean, that was part of the narrative, right? Tyreek versus old team, and it wasn't just potentially on the field, but, within the context of can he help, them prepare strategically for the Chiefs' offense? No, he's going to know the intricacies for sure, but you prepare for one team a week, right? I mean, the film is out there. what they're doing is also differently. If you remember, and I'm not saying he can't play a role there or he won't help there. One, it's just very difficult to gauge from a point perspective the value of that. But two, think about how the Chiefs had to change their offense once Tyreek Hill left, right? It was
for sure
deep downfield passing attack, and it's kind of been the opposite of that, where it's gone a little bit of dink and dunk to a different style once Tyreek left.
Such a good game to watch for all of those reasons. When you look at the chess match that'll go on with one of the best defensive minds on one side, one of the best offensive minds on the other, and Mike McDaniel going up against Spags as well. So I think for a football purist, this game has all the makings of being a classic, and you can only hope that you see a little bit of fireworks, but at the same time, you see a couple big defensive plays as well. Seahawks Ravens, Payne provides the middle of the day main course. When we look at the NFC meeting the AFC, and it's the Baltimore Ravens, a 6-point favorite in this contest, total of 44. It was only a few weeks ago where the Ravens welcomed in the Detroit Lions, made their statement against the NFC. We're a 3-point favorite in that contest. Lamar Jackson has owned the NFC in his NFL career, going 17-1, including 8-0 in home games. When we look at the Seahawks, this is a relatively young roster. They're third in the league in terms of giving snaps to rookies, and it's paying dividends, especially amid the 49ers struggles and that 3-game losing streak. Some of the things that we've grown accustomed to from this Seahawks offense, they utilize play action, they utilize a lot of heavy sets. But Geno Smith, you highlighted going into last week against the Cleveland Browns, could have some issues against man coverage. And when you look at the drive summary that the Seattle Seahawks put forth, they were great out of the gates. It was touchdown, field goal, 17 points. And after that, it was punt, interception, punt, punt, before they get the game-winning touchdown against the Cleveland Browns. So when you look at the Seahawks' path to offensive success against a Ravens defense that's giving us flashbacks to the 2001 edition, albeit minus an Ed Reed and Ray Lewis out there, how does Geno have to go about operating to have some success moving the football consistently for Seattle on Sunday?
Yeah, we can be a little more concise here since we broke down Geno Smith and the Seahawks offense, multiple times the last couple of weeks. But Seattle's stepping up in class again. And you look, even with that Cleveland data point on the resume last week, Seattle still played a bottom 10 schedule of defenses so far. And now you get a Ravens defense that's trending extremely well as they get healthier, and the secondary is returning guys like Williams and Worley either this week or next. But as a whole, the Ravens right now number 1 or number 2 in defensive efficiency and EPA per play allowed. So big hike up there. We're starting to see Seattle's makeshift offensive line get exposed the last couple of weeks. They were down a couple tackles. They were down a couple interior linemen. We were giving a bunch of kudos to their O-line coach, who was doing a great job mixing and matching. But eventually, right, that the pipes just burst. If you look like pre-bye, they were keeping Geno pretty comfortable. Coming out of the bye, the Bengals, Cardinals, and Browns have basically Geno running for his life, more than a 44% pressure rate the last 3 games. And when Geno's pressured, almost a 6% turnover-worthy play rate. Baltimore is above league average in pass rush win rate. Geno had 2 more picks again last week. You mentioned kind of once the script wore off, he was a different dude. The final, 3 quarters obviously helped, manufacture a game-winning drive, but it didn't look great for a large portion of that game against some of the man looks that were being presented to him by the Browns. Now, those passing splits are pretty relevant again this week. Man versus zone for Geno. It's a little bit different. The Ravens under Mike Macdonald kind of been a little bit of a mixed bag, right? Macdonald's kind of shown the ability to be multiple and form his game plans to the opponent. We've seen a willingness to play more man coverage with guys like Marlon Humphrey once he came back healthy. If you remembered early in the season, Todd, like Baltimore's a little decimated there in the secondary. Yep. We're mixing and matching pieces, and we're playing a little bit more zone to protect. We're playing a lot more off coverage to protect those backups. And now, that Marlon Humphrey's back, other guys are back. They're playing more man coverage. That's where Marlon Humphrey likes to play. Feels more comfortable with that style of football. And it didn't really improve last week for Geno. So, again, out of 38 qualifying quarterbacks that have dropped back at least 50 times this season, Geno Smith is number 35 in EPA per dropback against man coverage. So, based upon the matchup, it feels like we're going to have a potentially choppy Seattle offense that kind of operates and fits in spurts again here like last week.
When you look at Baltimore on the other side of the ball, Lamar Jackson putting up similar numbers that he did to his 2019 MVP campaign, but the new wrinkle that we're seeing from Lamar is an overly accurate passing attack. I mean, he's third in the league in completion percentage, north of 70%, has the most rushing yards, 380 by any quarterback with a 70% completion percentage through 8 games of a season all time. You're getting productivity from Gus as well. Most rushing attempts for the Ravens this season, most rushing yards, and a career-high 3-touchdown performance last week against Arizona. The passing attack, not devoid of weapons in any potential category either. Zay Flowers, career-low 19 receiving yards last week against Arizona, but you're seeing what Rashad Bateman and Odell Beckham Jr. can do in secondary roles. We know what Mark Andrews is, but they're going to have a difficult task in their own right against a Seattle defense that is trending well and made some nice additions in recent weeks, picking up Leonard Williams from the Giants before the trade deadline. They bring back a familiar face in Frank Clark that'll probably help in known passing situations, but more importantly, getting a tremendous amount of production from a top 10 overall pick in Devin Witherspoon that has solidified some of their back end.
I think we're going to find out more about Baltimore in this spot than Seattle. I mean, even with some of those additions that you mentioned, and I mean, that may sound wild to some, but I think as I was going through this game in my mind a little bit, it's pretty clear that Seattle's in that 8 to 10 range. And I just don't see a path to like entry in the top 7 because Geno caps the ceiling. So I just, power rating wise, I can't see a situation where the Seahawks power rate better than the Ravens or the 49ers, the Bills or the Chiefs or the Dolphins or the Cowboys or the Eagles, right? Unless there's some catastrophic injury. But Baltimore, to me, is like Super Bowl or bust. And I don't know if you're kind of tracking this, or I know you speak to certain guys, I speak to certain guys, we kind of interchange some information. But a lot of the guys that I'm speaking with this week, it's like they've catapulted the Ravens to the top spot in their power ratings.
It's pretty wild to see.
Yeah. And so for me, like, this is where we get to see that new look Ravens offense operate almost strictly under that new identity and spread Seattle out and throw it all over, because it's nearly impossible to run on the Seahawks defense, right? They're top 5 in yards allowed before first contact and rushing success rate allowed. Now you sprinkle in Leonard Williams inside at the deadline. How much he contributes this week, I don't know, but certainly isn't going to disrupt that. He's only going to add to the great run defense there. But there's a few reasons we've seen Ravens money so far this week. It's a massive step up in class for Seattle. You just look at the schedule, right? This isn't the Panthers offense with a backup quarterback or the injury-riddled Giants offense. It's not Josh Dobbs or PJ Walker. Seattle has played the second easiest schedule of offenses in the NFL. Now you're going out on the road. You're getting a top 5 Baltimore offense. Schematically, the Seahawks live in zone. Lamar Jackson, top 5 quarterback in EPA per dropback against zone. He's absolutely crushed it this season. Seattle hasn't faced a great schedule of tight ends either. But you look at Njoku and Laporta, they were both quite efficient. There's also been some chatter about Lamar Jackson not handling the blitz well this season. We're starting to see at least signs of positive regression there now that the offensive line is healthy and Lamar has a better understanding of a brand new offense and isn't thinking as much, right? When you're thinking and all of a sudden you're getting blitzed, you're like, it's not first nature, right? And now we're 8-9 weeks in. It's typically when you start to see like new schemes start to take off. That's about the 8 to 10 week window. Seattle, though, doesn't blitz often, so that's a positive. And I'm sure you'll see Clint Hurt dial up a few calculated blitzes. You mentioned Witherspoon. I mean, he's a demon off the edge there, coming from the slot. That athleticism and the tackling ability probably gives him the best chance to impact Lamar on those blitzes. But in general, Seattle's 27th in blitz rate. So that might not be a problem this week. But past that, I think, it's a real good conversation on price to be had here, right? Like if you had the Ravens like power rate number 1, laying 5.5 isn't expensive. If you don't have Baltimore power rated number 1 and you believe Seattle can be a top 7 team and you're also infatuated with the Lions, You're probably saying to yourself, Baltimore was only laying 3 to Detroit 10 days ago. How can they lay 6 against a Seahawks team that beat the Lions in their own building? So inherently, I think there's going to be a little bit of a battle on this game here, Todd.
It makes a lot of sense when you look at how the market responds to the fluidity, and I think you bringing up that data point for the Seahawks-Lions game is fascinating as well, because the Lions in that game were right around a 3.5 point favorite. We don't use 3 points as a blind home field advantage in 2023, so it suggests the Lions at that point were a better team than the Seahawks. The Seahawks now catch a full field goal more, albeit against a Ravens team that may now just starting to be scratching the surface of how good this team can be on both sides of the ball. When you look at Lamar Jackson's grasp of Todd Monken's offense that you highlighted, and a defense getting healthier, trending in the right direction, starting to do a lot of big things. You can follow Payne on X at Payne Insider. I'm Todd Fuhrman. You can follow me there. Most importantly, follow the podcast at Bet the Board Pod. And if you haven't already subscribed to the Bet the Board podcast newsletter, now is as good a time as any to do so. Delivered directly to your inbox every single Friday throughout the course of football season. A great reminder for what you may have missed during the course of the week, and additional best bet content to get you to the window with an edge on game day. Into the late afternoon, Payne. Cowboys-Eagles, a showdown for bragging rights in the NFC East and a chance to assert a level of dominance in some capacity. For the Eagles, they are atop the division with a 1-game lead over the Cowboys in the loss column, but the schedule will really stiffen for Philadelphia when you look at their next 6 opponents. A combined record of 31-14. It's the Cowboys this week. It's the Chiefs, the Bills, the Niners, the Cowboys again, and the Seahawks. So we're going to figure out if Philadelphia is the team to beat in the NFC. Second career matchup, which I found interesting, between Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts. Both missed 1 game in the rivalry last season, so not a high level of familiarity with these two quarterbacks going head-to-head. As far as the Cowboys, 4 20-point wins this year in the first 7 games. They've accomplished that feat for the first time since 1969. Relatively high-scoring series as well. We've seen it go over the total 5 straight meetings. Cowboys 14-7 on the road since the start of 2021, a second-best mark in the NFL. 28-13 overall, which is also the second best mark in the league, but Jalen Hurts has been dynamite covering numbers at home with a 9-3-2 record. Payne, people watched the Cowboys offense last week. They saw them put up a crooked number against the Rams. Suddenly, apparently, everything is fixed for what Dallas wants to do on the offensive line. I find it hard to believe they're going to move the football with reckless abandon this week against that Philly defensive front that is going to make Dak Prescott beat him with his arm, because the ground game may be bottled up right from the opening kickoff.
You never totally know what you're going to get from Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott, especially when those two are together. The Cowboys were hitting on all cylinders last week. That's for sure. And if you look before garbage time, 58% success rate, more than 0.23 expected points each time Dallas snapped the ball on offense against the Rams. That's a bottom third of the league Rams defense, and you had 2 weeks to prepare. Like, if Mike McCarthy doesn't look competent in that spot, when will he, right? Like, so I kind of gauged your sarcasm there, and I start to think you're kind of feeling the same way. It's the tough part about this is Mike McCarthy and Brian Schottenheimer want to embrace data. They want to embrace analytics. They want to get into the matchups. It's not their first language, right? They were taught in a different era. So they can spam all of the new efficient things in specific games, and it looks great, especially when it's not expected from them. But it feels like they do it for the sake of doing it without knowing, the when, the why, and sometimes like the how. And it's like copying off the smart kid in class. Like, sure, you'll get some high marks from time to time, but you end up getting a B- or a C+ for the semester because it's not your own work or creation. And like, you can watch the Chargers game, right, pre-bye against a bottom 10 defense, and you're like, great, like Dak's running more, and awesome. Like, Mike is using some plus formations, and he's dialing up some great calls. Then you look at the end of the game, you're like, oh, 20 points on the board. And so it's kind of clunky even when they are doing the right things. And it's why the Cowboys offense, if you look in totality, it's middling in efficiency despite facing a bottom 10 schedule of defenses. Now, Dak's had success against better versions of this Eagles defense, and I think that's where some of the hope comes for in this game, because it does absolutely feel like a Dak game that's going to be on his shoulders and in the passing attack, because there's not a ton of push happening up front for that Cowboys offensive line right now. The O-line's middling in adjusted line yards created. Cowboys are only averaging 1.4 yards per rush before first contact. In totality, 28th in EPA per rush. Tony Pollard doesn't seem to be as explosive as he was pre-leg injury either, for whatever reason. He's in the 21st percentile in runs of 10-plus yards among qualifying running backs. So not good. We've had a little bit of a dip there. Now, there are matchups for Dallas that they should be able to exploit this week. I think the one thing, if you want to give McCarthy credit, he's done a nice job of moving CeeDee Lamb around more the last couple games. He's not just living in the slot like he used to. The last 2 games have been pretty split between the slot and outside. Brandon Cooks is starting to look himself after battling a little early season injury. The Eagles have faced a below average schedule of offenses, and they're also in the bottom third of the league defending passes. So there is a path here if McCarthy is dialing up the right, scheme, and things
Mike,
are rolling this week.
Mike, just flip on the Commanders' game plan. Figure out what Sam Howell was doing and get the ball out in space. It shouldn't be rocket science to attack this Eagles defense and some of their pass struggles. Do you think Kevin Byard being included in that secondary can pay immediate dividends on the back end for Philly?
It's certainly going to help a bunch, right? Because then you can move some guys around. It's going to help, I think, some of the explosiveness that Philadelphia's given up. Where the concern lies is the slot, right? They've had real trouble replacing Gardner Johnson there. They brought in Roby. He's still dinged up. They haven't put him on the IR yet, so it kind of tells me that he'll be back sooner than later, but I don't think this will be the week. But I think what you're going to have, and partly the reason we've seen some over money enter the market, is the assumption that Dallas isn't going to be able to run the ball efficiently, just based upon how good that Eagles defensive front is, how lackluster the ground game's been for Dallas. So we're just going to say, hey, this is going to be a pass funnel type of game, which typically is the case when you're playing the Eagles.
Yep.
And we're going to put the ball in Dak's hands. And so, more passing is going to lead to more efficiency, potentially the clock stopping right more often on some of those incomplete passes when they do arrive. But I think that's the way right now you want to attack the Eagles is through the air, especially in the middle of the field, in the slot. So maybe there isn't as much of CeeDee Lamb outside, although they've been getting shredded by outside receivers a ton this year too. Man, it's an interesting game. I have a feeling we're going to potentially see some Dallas money enter the market here. That's just my vibe.
James Bradbury looked a little bit more like a traffic cone this season so far than a truly elite lockdown corner. You wonder, he missed some time early in the year. You wonder if there's any lingering effects of those injuries. Jalen Carter, full participant in practice, which I found interesting on Wednesday. I know it was a walkthrough after he went through an MRI on his knee. I'm curious to see what his workload will be this weekend as well. Now, for Dallas defensively, Payne, this is a group that's going to have to step up. The last time we saw them on the big stage against the San Francisco 49ers, they looked ill-equipped to do much of anything. And Micah Parsons historically has really struggled to generate pressure when Lane Johnson is on the field. A 13% pressure rate with Lane in the mix, 38% with him off the field. The Cowboys, their secondary has played a little bit better. Deron Bland and Stephon Gilmore doing a very good job even without Trevon Diggs. They were able to hold Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua largely in check for extended stretches there. But the Cowboys a little bit deficient in the middle of the field. They've gone deep into the stable to try and get healthy linebackers out there. In steps a Philadelphia team that has been middling at best when it comes to running the football, but we're seeing big gains for Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, and maybe even Dallas Goedert sighting in this spot, knowing the middle of the field has been an area where you can beat this Cowboys defense.
Yeah, I think that is... There's certainly areas that you can attack, right? I will say when you start to look at some of the things Philadelphia is doing on offense, one, they're stepping up in class here, right? They've played a bottom third of the league schedule of defenses, and it's very clear that Jalen Hurts isn't 100% even if he's not being listed on the injury report. And so the speculation there is he's battling a bone bruise in his knee. It's somewhat reflective in his rushing attempts and efficiency the last 2 games, aside from the tush-push stuff or being absolutely forced to move because of the pocket flushing.
Yeah.
Right? There probably won't be a ton of designed runs here. I mean, Hurts only scrambled once last week, and then you have a Dallas team who's leading the league in pressure rate still. So Jalen not having full mobility isn't great. Dallas has also been far better defending running back runs than QB runs as well. And then you kind of think back on the schedule a little bit. At the time the game was played, the Eagles have faced only one above average passing defense so far this season. It was the Jets, and they were without Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, and so it probably not a data point that's as strong as it would appear on the surface.
I mean, hey, look, you watch the Eagles struggle to move the ball through the air. Maybe the Jets' backups are better, given what they put on tape in the second half to clamp down. But all kidding aside, sorry.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's interesting what they did to kind of hide the backup corners there, and it wasn't just those 2 gentlemen down. I believe there was like a 3rd or a 4th guy down as well in that Jet secondary for that game. And the Eagles' pass offense didn't show well in that spot, and 21st out of 30 offenses in EPA per pass for that Week 6 game. I think it'll be interesting to see what Dan Quinn comes up with to try to limit A.J. Brown, who's just been... I mean, it's basically him and Tyreek now. I mean, just both been on a dominant tear. Quinn typically has his defense live in man coverage, right? 3rd highest rate in the NFL. Can't really play that against A.J. Brown. Maybe they double him, but I mean, A.J. Brown right now averaging nearly 4.5 yards per route run against man coverage this season, and Jalen Hurts makes it a point to get A.J. Brown the ball when he's pressured or when there's man coverage. I mean, A.J. Brown is basically Jalen Hurts' first read every single time when he sees man coverage. So Quinn's going to have to come up with something to figure out, because you can't go into a game that's this important and be like, A.J. Brown beat us today for $180 and 2 touchdowns. Like, if he beats you getting doubled, okay. But you just can't go single coverage there and have him torch you. This side of the ball just feels like it has a wide range of outcomes. I mean, the Eagles running backs haven't been overly efficient recently. I know a lot of fans are clamoring for we're hoping for an addition of a running back at the trade deadline. Swift's volume is there, but hasn't been as efficient the last 3 games. But Dallas is 30th. And rushing success rate allowed. Nearly 46% of runs against the Cowboys have graded positively. So it's like, to me, the Eagles have to have that part of their offense going, and Swift and Gainwell need to be a little bit more efficient, but you're also not using Jalen in the run game. So it's just, you could see a style that maybe is a little bit slower, if the Eagles are able to get their ground game going. So I just don't know if you're suddenly going to just fire up the pass game against a defense that is number 1 in pressure rate and just be able to live in that if your ground game isn't going. So I think that's where some of the variance lies on this side of the ball with the Eagles offense. Yeah,
it's such an interesting matchup because when you look at their current form, both teams obviously have questions that need answering. I mean, Dallas along that offensive line, you highlighted, it's a group that's been middling at best so far this year. We'll see if Tyron Smith can give it a go, but they need some of that cohesiveness up front. Micah Parsons has to make big plays against this Philadelphia offensive line, but it's an Eagles team that really lacks some of that big play potential we grew accustomed to watching last year. So a big measuring stick game for 2 teams that have aspirations of winning the division and making a deep run within the NFC playoffs. Into the AFC, the showdown on Sunday Night Football, Payne pits the Bills against the Bengals. The last time we saw these teams do battle, it was Cincinnati going on the road right around a 6-point underdog, winning outright in Western New York in the AFC playoffs. This game has been an absolute battle in the betting market. We saw Cincinnati open right around a pick'em, number get to 3. There's been dog money that came in on Buffalo. We saw another wave right as we started to record this morning that has the market down in that 1.5 range at some of the sharpest shops. There are some 2s still out there as well. The total, however, has only seen one-way traffic, opening as low as 46.5, now out to 49.5 amid speculation that what we saw last week from the Bengals offensively is something that we will see going forward. These teams boast some of the most prolific quarterback, wide receiver duos of the last 3 seasons. Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs have combined for 27 touchdowns, most in the NFL. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, 26 touchdowns, second most in the league during that same span. The Bengals, it's almost like they get a new lease on life after they get a chance to hit the reset button during the bye week. They've gone 18-5 in all games following their bye week, going back to the 2021 season. And if the market holds here, there may be a chance that Buffalo moves into a slight road favorite, although I highly doubt it. It would snap a 26-game streak where the Bills enter games as a favorite. It's the longest active streak in the NFL. Payne, last Thursday against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we saw flashes of what this Bills offense could be. They utilized some tempo early. Josh Allen spread the ball around. It wasn't just Stephon Diggs. You got plenty of Dalton Kincaid, Khalil Shakir, Gabe Davis off the milk carton onto the stat sheet, James Cook getting involved, and it showed the level and capabilities that this offense can display as long as it doesn't operate with a governor, the fourth quarter notwithstanding, where Sean McDermott elected to punt not once but twice with a chance to put the game on ice. There appears to be a very easy-to-find path for success for Buffalo offensively against this Bengals defense.
Yeah, he was doing so well. I think part of that had to do just with the opponent, right? I mean, Baker on the other side.
He almost paid for it, though. If Godwin looks around, suddenly you go, oh, that didn't work out the way we drew it up.
Yeah, exactly. The questions about the Bills' offense before the season that we had, those questions were right to have, and unfortunately came to fruition. Kind of banged the table for change multiple weeks in a row early on in the season. Finally got that change, right, this past Thursday night. I probably shouldn't have said it out loud. I did. The Dawson Knox injury is a blessing in disguise. That forced Buffalo into more 3 wide receiver looks, and then with Kincaid on the field, it's really almost a 4 wide look. Then the internal adjustments came, right? There was more tempo, more Josh Allen run game, and there really isn't a reason at this point to think that won't be the case again this week and even moving forward. Josh Allen was in his weekly presser. He was specifically asked about those changes, and Josh flat out said, I feel more comfortable operating that way. So now that's out to the world, right? And to me, there's no going back. When your franchise player is making $260 million, tells you and tells the world he's more comfortable doing A, B, and C, if your head coach starts demanding you go back to doing X, Y, and Z, he's going to be ran out of town eventually. Right, they're going to side with the franchise quarterback. So I think we're kind of in a good spot here for the good Bills offense. And, if you're using those 3-4 wide receiver sets, you're going tempo, Josh Allen's using his legs, the Bills offense becomes tough to defend. Really explosive. If you look at the Bengals defense, they've clearly regressed this season, 26th in passing success rate allowed. They're surrendering nearly 8 yards per pass attempt. Bottom third of the league in EPA per rush allowed. Cincinnati is also tackling like shit, 27th. You look at the cornerback situation. They're, aside from Hilton inside playing in the slot, if you look at all of the outside cornerbacks to this point, there isn't one on the roster that's graded above replacement level in coverage this season. So to me, this is very much about scheme and intent for Buffalo's offense as the driving force to efficiency, right? Along with some defensive regression and, a lack of Jimmys and Joes in the Bengals secondary that are ready to contribute at this moment. I don't want to shit on some of the guys back there because Bengals fans will come at me in like 8 weeks. But like in this moment, right, it doesn't appear like Chidobe's 100% comfortable post ACL. DJ Turner and Taylor Britt are young and uber talented, but kind of learning on the fly and being thrown into the fire. That might look different in 6 or 8 weeks. This moment right now, that trio hasn't played to the talent level. The other interesting part to this game, and it'll kind of put an exclamation point on the Bills offense and also help transition us here to the other side, Todd. When's the last time the Bills offense has been pushed? Like truly needed to score. It was against the Dolphins.
Against the Patriots was about it.
No. Like think about this. Like the other offenses Buffalo's played, haven't really pushed them. But to your point, yes, they were so shitty early that they got behind and were forced to push.
That was of their own doing, of course.
Yes. Yeah. You look though, like recently, it's the Jets offense. It's the Raiders. It's the Commanders. It's the Giants. It's the Patriots. It's the Buccaneers offense. The average efficiency rank of those offenses is 28th. It's going to be just a different task here when you got Cincinnati's offense on the other side, to where there's like two teams pushing here. Something we haven't seen a lot this season, right? We talk about scoring being down, right? A lot of things are contributing to that. The shit quarterbacks, you get these matchups where, I mean, the quarterback crop right now is like, you got the high end, and then there's just like this massive drop off. There's a lot of quarterbacks, right? I mean, potentially Clayton Tune starting this week. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's caused a lot of weird, funky data points, and in those blowouts, like we saw last week, right? Like the Bills' offense ain't pushing late. We're punting on 4th and short 3 different times from midfield and plus territory. So now they're potentially getting pushed here by a good offense.
I mean, Payne, let's not sugarcoat it. Clayton Tune may not even be the worst starting quarterback in that game he's playing in, knowing who's going to be staring across the field at him under center for the Cleveland Browns. So how dare you start with the Clayton Tune slander already before he can take a snap?
This is an inside joke, but P.J. Walker gave me more problems this morning than any defense he's faced this season.
Hey, you couldn't figure out how to navigate through things. That's not on PJ. That's on you and your inability to handle technology accordingly. You mentioned
trying to fire up a data point here, and I just kept getting the circle of death on the P.J. Walker data point I was looking for.
You mentioned the Bengals offense, though, and Joe Burrow obviously trending significantly better than he was early in the year. Over the last 3 games, a completion percentage approaching 80%, 8 touchdowns to 2 picks, 7 yards per attempt over those 3 games compared to just 4.8 yards per attempt in the first 4 games of the season. He was pretty prolific in his win against the 49ers last week, more than 300 yards passing, multiple touchdown passes. Highest completion percentage in a game in Bengals history with a minimum of 30 attempts. Had a streak in that contest where he completed 19 straight. You got Joe Mixon going, a season-high 87 rushing yards. He is a stat compiler, even if he isn't the model of efficiency. The receiving room, however, isn't just stat compilers. Jamar Chase, more than 8.5 receptions a game this season, 320 yards after the catch per Pro Football Focus. It's the second most in the league, and we're still awaiting the T. Higgins breakout game. 11.5 yards per reception this season, a career low. 36.3 receiving yards a game this season, a career low. 4 games with fewer than 25 receiving yards. I can go on and on. Once the light turns on for Higgins, we've seen what Tyler Boyd can contribute. Charlie Jones, not anywhere closer to return, as they won't even open his 21-day window. But this Bengals offense looking a lot more like the addition we saw last year as Joe Burrow's calf continues to trend in a positive direction.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the expectation is for the Bengals to have success on offense in this spot. And, you start going through a lot of these things, and, I try, at least for the audience, breaking games down in a little bit of a different manner. I think for this one, it's schedule and health that matters the most on this side of the ball. If you look at Buffalo, played the very easiest schedule of offenses through 8 weeks. Cincinnati, they played the 6th toughest schedule of defenses over that stretch, and the Bengals have done it while being, pretty wounded, to your point. Now they're healthy. Buffalo's defense isn't healthy, right? And since the loss of Daquan Jones and Matt Milano and Tre'Davious White, the Bills are trending extremely poor. That's basically, you think about, everyone talks about cluster injuries. I think it's always interesting gauging the multi-level injuries. Right? I mean, that's a key cog at every level. We're losing a guy in the D-line. We're losing a guy, in the heart of our defense. We're losing a guy at corner. And it's like, now all of a sudden you're weakening each of those units. And so you look at this, and Buffalo's 25th in success rate allowed the last 3 games, 23rd in EPA per play allowed. Everyone was so excited about Von Miller returning earlier than expected. And my Buffalo sources were cringing at that idea. He's not healthy yet. 79 snaps played in 4 games. Got 3 pressures on 61 pass rushing snaps.
You called it. You said he was a shell of himself, and I actually watched closely in known passing situations on Thursday night against the Bucs. You didn't even know he was out there.
Yeah, so Billy was one of the guys, right, who obviously I think our people know at this point. He was at one of their, I think, last scrimmages, and he's like, Vaughn didn't play. He's walking. It's like a massive limp. And then all of a sudden, like, hey, he's coming back to the London game. And he's like, boy, he's not going to be even close to ready. And so, yeah, I mean, hopefully he gets healthy down the stretch. I mean, that's what it's going to be about a lot of these teams with health. But now, you did see Buffalo. They went out, got a cornerback, something we suggested since Tre'Davious White went down. It's a nice scheme fit with Rasul Douglas from Green Bay. How much he gets implemented into the fold in 4 days, we'll see. It also looks like he was a DNP there for practice, battling a little bit of a slight injury. We'll see. But, I think in general, he was much needed. If he's not out there, contributing some is better than none. But you're looking the last 4 games, the Bills have allowed 72% of targets to be caught the last 4 games, and it comes against Baker Mayfield, Mac Jones, T-Mobile, right? Tyrod Taylor, and then Sunshine. So this is a much tougher test. I think it's very clear the Bengals offense is trending up. You go back to last season against a much better version of the Bills defense and in worse weather conditions than what we'll see Sunday night. The Bengals were moving the ball up and down the field for 5 quarters. And, really the only way the Bengals don't find success on offense, in my opinion, is if Buffalo's defensive line is just living in the backfield all game. But Burrow's done a very good job to combat pressure over the years. Right? I mean, how long have they been trying to fix this offensive line in Cincinnati? They spent a ton of money the last 2 off seasons. He's still getting pressured, but they've found a way. Right? Burrow's getting rid of it. 3rd fastest time to throw at under 2.5 seconds on the season. But to me, like the delta between both teams' schedules on this side of the ball and then the health, I think, is kind of the driving force here for the Bengals to have some serious success on offense.
I think the other thing, too, when you talk about generating pressure for Buffalo, something they're going to have to contend with this week that they wouldn't have if this game took place 3 or 4 weeks ago, they need to maintain their rush integrity in the lanes, because we saw Joe Burrow take off for the first time all year last week against the 49ers, had 6 carries along a 20 yards and looked to be willing and capable as a runner. And we know it's not an element of his game he likes to lean on nearly as much as Josh Allen, but it's something that should be in the back of the Bills' heads. And speaking of quarterback running, I mean, Brock Purdy looked like the second coming of Steve Young, so Josh Allen's legs should factor prominently as well for Buffalo when it comes to being able to extend drives in a game that no doubt will be one of the most exciting of the entire weekend. Can't wait to watch as 2 of the best in the AFC. Offenses trending in the right direction, plenty of fireworks, and obviously massive fantasy implications for a lot of our listeners out there, I am sure. You can follow Payne on social media at Payne Insider. I'm Todd Fuhrman. You can follow me there. Most importantly, follow the podcast at Bet the Board Pod. And Mr. Payne, we've done enough damage when it comes to breaking down games as in-depth as we know how to do it around these parts. It's the best bet portion of the program. Wasn't sure what you'd identified for our loyal listeners this fine weekend.
Boy, some of the games are good, but it's a little bit of a shit sandwich. And I know you and I were
You eat pieces of shit for breakfast?
We were conversing about 90 minutes before we started recording here, so this is probably going to come out a touch later than usual because of that. And, there's a couple things that we like. We bet 2 games ourselves. Both have kind of crossed into key numbers, and we don't want to give you the secondary number. Kind of give you an idea of what we're thinking here in our planned approach. Obviously, the NFL has not gone as well as we'd like. 3-7 now on all the best bets on the NFL side. College football been fantastic. Newsletter been fantastic. So our goal here is kind of to chip away at the NFL. We're not going to chase, not do all that. Keep the newsletter and college football hot. And when the dust settles at the end of the year, we'll have another winning portfolio for Bet the Board listeners, like we have every single year since inception in 2014. So what I want to do is let's kind of punt for now, but we'll have a best bet up on the website at some point. Don't ask because I don't know when, right? It could be 3 hours and 16 minutes from the time the podcast goes live. Could be Sunday morning, could be Saturday night. Whenever we kind of think is the best time to enter the market, we'll throw it up on the website. We probably won't tell anybody because we don't want the website crashing. We went that route last time, and you guys,
Kudos to Degenerate.
I love the fervor.
Kudos to Degenerate Nation, all of our loyal listeners, crashing the website, spamming our timelines, going, I need it, I need it, I need it, I need it, and I need it now.
So it'll be up there. We'll do a good job to make sure the NFL podcast is the one that is on top of the website. So you'll just, you could probably see it from the main homepage, but there also will be like a read more button on that top podcast. If you click that, it'll take you directly to the page, but we'll put it up atop of the main page so you can kind of see it right there. Again, so let's just kind of do that. We'll chip away at the deficit in the NFL. We'll keep the college and the newsletter rolling, and that's kind of the plan of attack for the back half of the season.
We will make it happen. Look, this is a marathon, not a sprint. You'd love to come out of the gates white hot in the NFL. We haven't been afforded that luxury, but it doesn't stop the hard work or us continuing to grind or chip away, as you said, Payne. So we'll do our best to make sure that we give everybody the greatest opportunity to continue stockpiling positions as we trend into the month of November. Anything else you'd like to share with our loyal listenership?
No, that's it. It's been a good week of information. A lot of good games on both the college and NFL front relative to, I think, what we had last week, especially the last couple of weeks in the NFL. So it all starts from Frankfurt, Germany, Sunday morning. That'll be an interesting game. I'm hoping I don't find myself at the bar. All the buddies are trying to con me into going to that.
I'll love it. I'll love it. You being at the
it's
bar
not,
9:30 in the morning on an NFL Sunday. Payne Insider at the bar. I won't divulge your location in terms of where you'll be because you might get swarmed with listeners. But man, that's something I didn't think I was going to see. It was tough enough to get you to the bar in Nashville last year on Sunday, even after games kicked off.
There's about a 0.7% chance I actually end up.
So you're telling me there's a chance. That's all I hear in that. All right. For Payne Insider, I'm Todd Fuhrman. You can follow Payne on social media at Payne Insider. I'm Todd Fuhrman. You can follow me there. Most importantly, follow the podcast at Bet the Board Pod. And we'll get back to you on Sunday with a best bet winner in the National Football League. But in the meantime, subscribe to the Bet the Board podcast newsletter. There will be something in there to wet your beaks and get you in action earlier than the best bet on the site. So best of luck this weekend with all of your NFL investments.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Bet the Board. Make sure you follow Todd and Payne on X. Todd is at Todd Fuhrman. That's TODDFUHRMAN. And Payne is at Payne Insider. That's PAYNEINSIDER. Don't forget, our weekly newsletter comes with an additional best bet. Have that delivered to your inbox by clicking the link atop the podcast show notes. And most importantly, subscribe and download Bet the Board. We're on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Wondery, YouTube, Google Podcasts, and all your other major platforms.